the top 10 men, top 10 women. We wrote a letter, and it's not nice that after 1 year we are not even...
Sinner just made every other player at this French Open look amateur. And John McEnroe, the man who hasn't stopped talking since 1977, has gone completely silent. Here's why. 24 hours ago, Sinner stood in Rome and completed the career Golden Masters at age 24. Djokovic did it at 31. He broke the all-time Masters winning streak record, 34 consecutive wins, then won 2 more on top of it. 17 wins, 0 losses on clay this season. 6 Masters titles in a row. A record no human being has ever touched. This morning, qualifying began at Roland Garros. Alcaraz, the defending champion, the only man who has genuinely stopped Sinner, withdrew with a wrist injury. Gone. Zverev is 8-1. Djokovic has played 1 clay match all season. Ruud lost to Sinner for the 5th straight time 48 hours ago. Last year, McEnroe told the world live on TNT Sports that Sinner would be favored against prime Nadal on clay. The tennis community called it outrageous. Ljubicic said nonsense. Muratoglu made a YouTube video to dismantle it. McEnroe goes silent now, because he wasn't predicting the future. He was just early. Before we get into it, if you are not subscribed yet, hit that button right now and turn on notifications. This is exactly the kind of story this channel lives for. You do not want to walk into Roland Garros blind.
What I've missed, in a way of achieving things, and
Think about what McEnroe actually said. He stood on live television in front of millions and told the tennis world that Sinner would be favored against Rafael Nadal, 14-time French Open champion, 112-4 at Roland Garros, the greatest clay court player in the history of the sport, at his absolute best, not on a bad day, not on a slow court, at his peak. The backlash was immediate and savage. Ivan Ljubicic called it nonsense. Patrick Muratoglu went on YouTube and spent 7 minutes dismantling it. Andy Murray told the BBC that people needed to stop forgetting what Nadal, Federer, and Djokovic had built over 20 years. Fans wanted the mic taken away. The outrage was loud, genuine, and completely understandable. But McEnroe wasn't wrong. He was watching something the rest of the world hadn't fully processed yet. Because here is what happened after that final last June. Sinner walked off court Philippe Chatrier, having led 2 sets to love, having held 3 championship points, having played perhaps the greatest Grand Slam final of his career up to that point, and still lost. Alcaraz pulled him back from the brink in 5 sets and 5 hours and 29 minutes, the longest French Open final in history. The super tiebreak in the 5th set ended 10-2. Sinner won just 2 points. The scoreline in that tiebreak reads like a humiliation, and the cameras caught exactly how it felt. He said afterwards he wouldn't sleep well that night. He was right to say it. Most players take months to recover from a loss like that. A championship point squandered, a 2-set lead dissolved, history snatched away in the most brutal fashion the sport offers. Sinner took 5 weeks. He walked onto center court at Wimbledon on July 13th, faced Alcaraz again in the final, dropped the first set and then won the next 3, 6-4, 6-4, 6-4 after losing the opener. First Italian man in the history of the sport to win Wimbledon. He didn't celebrate for long. He processed it, thanked his team, and started thinking about the next one. That is the psychological profile of the man arriving at Roland Garros this fortnight. Not a player carrying the wound of last year's near miss. A player who treated that near miss as data, adjusted and moved forward so quickly that the tennis world barely had time to understand what it was watching. And that profile was built on something harder than any tennis court. In February 2025, Sinner accepted a 3-month suspension after reaching a settlement with the World Anti-Doping Agency over 2 positive tests for clostebol the previous year. The ban ran from February 9th to May 4th, 2025. He returned at the Italian Open. Within 3 weeks, he was in a Grand Slam final. Within 6 weeks, he had lost that final from a position of total control with 3 championship points. Within 5 weeks of that loss, he had won Wimbledon. A player who spent 3 months away from the sport under a cloud that most people expected to break him, walked back onto tour and ran directly into the best period of his career. The doping case is not a footnote, it is The pressure test that proved the structure. Whatever Sinner is made of withstood something that would have ended the competitive appetite of most athletes. What came out the other side is what Roland Garros faces in 2026. The 2026 Australian Open told a different story temporarily. Djokovic, at 38, produced one of the performances of his entire career to beat Sinner in a 5-set semifinal. 3-6, 6-3, 4-6, 6-4, 6-4. Sinner led 2 sets to 1. He had 8 break points in the 5th set and converted none of them. Djokovic saved them all, served his 12th ace of the evening at 5-3 and closed it out. Sinner said it hurt. A lot. It was the first time Djokovic had beaten him since 2023. It was the first time Sinner had failed to reach a Grand Slam final since Wimbledon 2024. By any reasonable measure, it was a setback. Then the clay season began, and the tennis world started to realize that the Australian Open loss was not a crack in the foundation. It was the last time Sinner would lose for months. The sequence that followed is worth stating slowly, because each title in it broke a record that had stood for years. Indian Wells, Miami, Monte Carlo, Madrid. Each one arrived in succession. No drop sets across consecutive Masters finals at Indian Wells and Miami. The first time in history a player had achieved that feat. He became the first man ever to win the Sunshine Double Monte Carlo and Madrid in the same season. At Madrid, he dismantled Zverev 6-1, 6-2, a man ranked 3rd in the world, a player who openly admitted before that final that tennis had become very, very easy for Sinner, walked off court looking like he had played someone from a different sport. Then Zverev did something remarkable after that loss. He publicly placed himself alongside Alcaraz and Djokovic in what he called the tier just below Sinner. He drew a line between himself and the world number 1. Not arrogance, honesty. Zverev has reached 10 Grand Slam semifinals. He has been to 3 Grand Slam finals. He has 0 titles. His own words confirmed the gap that the scorelines had been showing for months. Sinner has beaten Zverev 9 consecutive times, 9. The last time Zverev beat him was 3 years ago on clay. That is not competition, that is a pattern. Arthur Fils enters this tournament as the home hope with genuine clay credentials and a crowd that will push him beyond what he believes possible. He retired in Rome with what turned out to be a precautionary injury and has been cleared to play in Paris. He is 20 years old, ranked in the top 10, and the Parisian clay suits his explosive movement and heavy forehand. On any other year without Alcaraz and without this version of Sinner, Fils would be a genuine French Open contender. In 2026, he is an interesting subplot. The gap between interesting subplot and genuine threat against the world number 1 is the precise gap that defines how far this field has fallen behind one man. Djokovic's situation at this French Open is even more sobering when you look at the numbers. He is 38. He has played 1 match on clay this entire season. He skipped Madrid. He lost to a qualifier in Rome in what was his only clay preparation before Paris. The credentials are beyond argument. 3 Roland Garros titles, 24 Grand Slams, a career clay win percentage of 80.2%, the highest of any active player. In his prime on this court, Djokovic was arguably the second best clay court player who ever lived. But the body has limits that the mind refuses to acknowledge, and his schedule this year has been the schedule of a man managing those limits carefully, rather than charging through them. That version of Djokovic is dangerous. It is also not the version that beats Sinner in 2026. Casper Ruud stepped onto the Foro Italico court on Sunday knowing exactly what was coming. He had been to 2 Roland Garros finals. He had won on clay his entire career. He arrived in Rome having prepared specifically for this moment, winning 8 of the first 9 points of the final to race to a 2-0 lead while Sinner misfired on serve. For approximately 12 minutes, it looked like it might be competitive. Then Sinner found his rhythm at 4-4, hit a backhand down the line that silenced the crowd for a split second before the roar returned, and that was the last moment of genuine threat in the match. 6-4, 6-4, 1 hour and 44 minutes. Ruud had now lost to Sinner 5 consecutive times. He stood at the net and told him in his on-court speech that what Sinner was doing this year was hard to describe with words. This from a man who knows the tour as well as almost anyone alive. The person who handed Sinner the trophy on Sunday was Adriano Panatta, the last Italian man to win in Rome before him. 50 years ago, Panatta won Rome and then went to Paris and won Roland Garros. He was the last Italian man to do it. When he embraced Sinner at the trophy ceremony, he leaned in and said he would be in Paris for the Roland Garros trophy presentation too. That he would be happy to hand Sinner a second one. Sinner replied that it would be the most beautiful thing in the world. Panatta told him not to worry. That was Sunday evening. Monday morning, qualifying began at Roland Garros. This is the part of the story that the numbers alone cannot carry. The symmetry is too precise to ignore. Panatta to Sinner, Rome to Paris, 50 years between them. One Italian completing what the other started. Roland Garros sits as the single remaining piece of a career that already includes the 2024 Australian Open, the 2024 US Open, the 2025 Australian Open, the 2025 Wimbledon title, 6 Masters titles in a row, and the career Golden Masters, all 9 Masters, 1,000 trophies on the circuit. He is the second man in history to own that set. The first was Djokovic, who finished it at 31. Sinner got there at 24. He is 7 years ahead of schedule and collecting silverware that men twice his experience haven't touched. The one thing that has genuinely stopped him at this tournament is gone. Alcaraz withdrew on April 24th with a wrist injury that rules him out until at least June. Before that withdrawal, the betting markets had both men at 50% each to win Roland Garros. The moment Alcaraz pulled out, Sinner's implied probability jumped to 70%. He opened as 2-7 with Bet365. Those odds do not reflect pessimism about the rest of the field. They reflect what everyone in professional tennis already knows but rarely says at full volume, that the gap between Sinner and the next credible challenger is not a ranking gap. It is a dimension gap. When Zverev said tennis had become very easy for him, he was describing something real. Sinner plays the game at a level that makes technically proficient professionals look like they are attempting something they haven't fully mastered. That is what McEnroe saw in June last year when he said what he said about Nadal. He wasn't making a disrespectful argument about a legend. He was recognizing that the sport had arrived at a point where 2 players, Sinner and Alcaraz, were operating at a level the game had not previously seen. One of those 2 players is not here this fortnight. The other is arriving in Paris off the back of the greatest sustained period of Masters-level dominance in the history of the sport, carrying a 17-0 clay record this season, with the weight of a 50-year Italian legacy on his shoulders, and a man named Panatta ready to hand him a second trophy if he can close it out. The only question left about this French Open is not whether Sinner reaches the final. It is whether anyone between now and June 7th can extend him to a 5th set. The field is not amateur in the sense of being unskilled. Zverev is a generational clay court player who has spent a decade building toward this tournament. Djokovic won Roland Garros 3 times and will find reserves on this court that no one expected. Ruud has been to this final twice and knows exactly how to construct a point on red clay. But amateur is exactly the word for what they look like when placed next to what Sinner has been doing since February. Not in talent, in distance. The distance between them and the front of this race is what makes the rest of the field look like it is playing a different event. McEnroe has gone silent because a man with 7 Grand Slam titles and 40 years of commentary has run out of the vocabulary needed to describe what Sinner is doing right now. Last year, the controversy was about whether Sinner could beat a ghost, the memory of Nadal in his prime. This year, the question is simpler and more brutal. Can anyone on the current tour make him work for it? Not slow him down temporarily, not win a set, win a match, over 5 sets, at Roland Garros, with the crowd, the clay, the occasion, and the weight of a career Grand Slam on his shoulders. The draw drops on Thursday. The main draw begins May 24th. The final is June 7th. Adriano Panatta has already told Sinner he will be there, trophy in hand. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button right now and turn on notifications, because the next 3 weeks at Roland Garros are going to give you content, breakdowns, and moments that you will not find anywhere else. This channel covers every match, every storyline, and every upset as it happens. Every upset, every silence, every moment the commentators run out of words. Do not watch this tournament without us.